The reign of Lil Ricky, Savannah's deadliest drug gang. Full voiceover Dutch lyric script. But in 1991, this peaceful image was shattered. That year, Savannah recorded 59 homicides, an explosive number for a city its size. And according to federal agents, nearly a third of those killings were connected to one crack cocaine organization, led not by a veteran kingpin, not by a cartel, but by a 23-year-old with a reputation for fearlessness, Lil Rick Jivens Jr. His gang controlled corners, blocks, and entire neighborhoods. They moved cocaine by the kilogram week after week, and they enforced their rule with a level of violence the city had never seen. This is the story of the drug empire that terrorized Savannah, of the young men who rose and fell in its shadow, and of the community that fought till the train was strikes.
A little Ricky.
Savannah's deadliest drug gang. Segment 1, before the storm. 2:36, some crack sellers overnight. Turf disputes turned deadly. Families were pulled apart by addiction. Police saw drive-by shootings increasing. Teachers saw kids showing up hungry, tired, or missing entirely. The violence and drug economy began to feed each other. And into that environment stepped a young man who understood the streets and realized just how powerful the crack trade could be. Lil Rick Jivens too. Lil Rick Jivens too.
Little Ricky.
Lil Rick Jivens Jr. grew up in Savannah's communities at the height of the crack boom. By his late teens and early 20s, he had built a reputation, fearless, strategic, and dangerously charismatic. Unlike many street dealers, Jivens thought bigger. He didn't just want to sell drugs, he wanted to control the entire pipeline. Federal reports later described him as the leader of a violent crack cocaine organization, one that operated with military-like structure. At its height, investigators say the Jivens organization moved up to 25 kilograms of crack cocaine every week through Savannah. That amount meant enormous profits and enormous power. But money wasn't their only weapon. The Jivens gang relied heavily on teenagers, young boys with few options and fewer role models. Some joined for money, others joined out of fear, and many were pressured to prove themselves through violence. When chilling rules circulated through the gang, new members had to get down, kill someone, anyone, or become a target themselves. To protect the empire, they turned Savannah streets and into war zones.
Little Ricky.
By 1990, Savannah was experiencing levels of bloodshed usually seen in major metropolitan cities. Shootings erupted over corner turf, drug debts, arguments, disrespect, and sometimes no reason at all. 1991 became the city's deadliest year on record. 59 homicides. Authorities believed as many as 20 were tied to the Jivens gang alone. Residents lived in fear. Parents kept their children indoors after school, terrified they'd be caught in the crossfire. Community elders begged the city to do something, anything to save their neighborhoods. Local news stations led almost every nightly broadcast with another shooting. Reporters stood outside yellow tape describing scenes of chaos, another mother screaming, another family destroyed. The gang's violence was so extreme that one prosecutor later said this gang was responsible for more murders than any other in Savannah's history. Another official recalled the early 90s by saying, for a moment, Savannah led the nation in per capita murders. Entire neighborhoods felt imprisoned by the gang's presence, and it was becoming clear, if law enforcement didn't act aggressively, Savannah might collapse under the weight of its own violence.
Little Ricky.
By the summer of 1991,
By the summer of 1991, the violence reached a breaking point. Savannah police, the DEA, the FBI, and Georgia state authorities launched a full-scale joint operation, one of the biggest drug investigations in the city's history. The DEA's mobile enforcement team moved into Savannah with a singular mission: dismantle the Jivens organization completely. Investigators tapped phones, Flipped gang members, tracked drug shipments, and built the case layer by layer. Like a puzzle coming together, they learned that the gang met regularly to discuss turf, discipline, and money. They learned how to group use young enforcers to commit murders, and they catalog each killing, each threat, each ounce of cocaine. At the same time, Savannah police increased community-oriented policing officers, opened many stations inside public housing complexes. Crime hotspots began to cool. Slowly the community felt hope returned, but the real blow came in the fall. On a morning in September 1991, Savannah residents woke the news that felt surreal. 18 members of the Jivens drug organization had been indicted on federal charges. For many, it felt like the city had finally been freed. Federal agents executed raids across Savannah, battering rams, flashlights cutting through darkness, officers shouting commands. Perp walks filled local news all cans. Families lined courthouse steps to see the faces of the men accused of terrorizing their neighborhoods. The charges included conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine, racketeering, firearms offense, drug trafficking, crimes connected to murders. Witness testimony, some from inside the gang revealed the brutal truth. A 15-year-old enforcer had killed on command. Members were ordered to commit acts of violence as loyalty tests. One high-ranking member received 14 life sentences plus 50 years for a particularly vicious armed robbery and kidnapping. At the center of it all was the young man who started it, Lil Rick Jivens Jr. He and his top lieutenants ultimately received some of the harshest federal sentences available. Savannah breathed a sigh of relief. The reign of Lil Ricky had ended.
Jivens used murder as an initiation right into the organization to ensure loyalty and to prevent members from turning against other gang members. A person had to get down. Murder! In order to enter the organization and to receive any sizable quantity of fronted cocaine, apparently. This requirement put many of Jivens' confederates in jeopardy of capital offense charges, gave prosecutors strong plea bargaining positions, and contributed to the downfall of the conspiracy. 5-5 CJR testified for the government under an immunity arrangement to provide an insider's perspective of the Ricky Jivens organization. In chilling details, CJR admitted smoking crack since the age of 12 and committing 3 murders. To prove his loyalty to the drug gang at the time of trial, CJR was 16 years old and had been a right-hand man in muscle for one of the Jivens organization's principal distributors, Samuel Lee Gadsden. Gadsden was a fugitive until he was captured in January '92, after which time he pled guilty to counts 1 and 3 of the indictment. U.S. On 12 S seat 99, 116 LA 2D71.
The sufficiency of the evidence to support a jury verdict is a question of law subject to de novo review. United States v. Harris, 20 F3D 445 452 11/94. In deciding, we view the evidence in the light most favorable to the government to ascertain whether the jury could have found the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. United States v. Poole, 87-8 F2D 1 through 89 1391.
The court need not exclude every reasonable hypothesis of innocence or find guilt to be the only reasonable conclusion.
United States v. Garcia, 13 F3D 1464 413079.
U.S. 1142 SC 2703 129 LA 2D847.
9 and 19.
The government called a juvenile witness, identified as CJR, to testify about Hull's membership in the drug conspiracy. 5 CJR identified Hull as a regular member of the Ricky Jivens gang who attended meetings on the back porch of Jivens' mother's house. He testified that, although he never saw Jivens deliver cocaine to Hull, did it pick up money from Hull that was routed to Jivens. CJR recounted that he had seen Hull with 2 kilograms of cocaine in his Wahlberg Street apartment. The cocaine was in Sixter's testimony, was corroborated by Jocelyn Hunter, murder victim Antonio Anderson's sister, and a known drug user who accompanied Ho to his apartment in August 1991 and saw bags of coke, cardboard, razor blades shake. 7 CJR's testimony was corroborated by Ricky Jivens in August 13, 1991. Videotape government witness Jerome Richardson also furnished the jury with similar testimony concerning what Ricky Jivens had said to him about Jimbo Hull powder form wrapped in a layer of black pepper, the gang signet. CJR testified that he saw Hull in 1991 with several ounces of cocaine and a quarter kilogram of crack on Wahlberg Street. 6JR claimed Jivens told him that Hull was instructed to shoot people 3 times in the head as his personal signet of 7. CJR implicated Hull in the drive-by murder of indicted drug dealer Antonio Anderson. CJR testified that he had seen Hull and Bazemore shoot Anderson with 2 automatic weapons, a Tech 9 and an AK-47 from a distance of 10 to 15 feet. This testimony was later impeached by forensic scientist Roger Perrigan of the Georgia State Crime Lab, who was called as an expert witness by the defense by that Anderson died as a result of gunshot wounds from a .38 or .357 pistol, not an automatic weapon. Savannah Police Department Homicide Records and Georgia Bureau of Investigation Crime Lab reports suggested that Anderson was shot at close range, 6 to 18 inches. CJR also testified that Anderson was shot at 11 p.m. when the actual time of death was shown by the autopsy report and homicide records to be many hours early. Co-conspirator Jerome Richardson was called as a witness for the government. He related his experience with Ricky Jivens and other gang members both before and after his July 16th.
Requirement that Jivens would allow Hull to sit in on his back. Porch meetings without Hulls being a full-fledged member of the gang, viewing the evidence in the light most favorable to the government. A reasonable trier of fact could have found that the evidence established Hull's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. We find the evidence at trial sufficient to support the jury verdict. IV conclusion. For the above reasons, we affirm Hull's conviction and sentence. Affirm it.
Within the hearsay exception of the federal rules of evidence. 801. We do not endorse the proposition that all hearsay statements
made by co-conspirators are admissible for a co-conspirator statement to be admissible under Rule 801. Must have been made during the course and in furtherance of the conspiracy.
Fed Arvid 801.
Board J. Levy, United States 43 U.S. 17-1. Los NMC 375. 2775. 27797 LL 2B144.
Nonetheless, this court applies a liberal standard in determining whether a statement is made in furtherance of a conspiracy.
United States v. Santiago 857 F2D145 Mycene 1988.
In addition to determination of whether a statement is made in furtherance of a conspiracy, is a determination of fact that will be disturbed only if clearly erroneous. See Board J. Lee.
483 US at 17-9 81 27 SC. Had to join that like C like 20 selling late one. United States v. Turner 87 Lin F2D 5T 45 5T 49. In addition to determination of whether a statement is made in furtherance of a conspiracy, is a determination of fact that will be disturbed only if clearly erroneous. See Board J. Lee 4.3 US at 17-9 81 27 SC at 279 C. Fine. United States v. Turner 87 Lin F2D 5T 73 41st 39 Sir denied 493 US 99 7 5E2 512 27 L at 2D 548. The security of the drug gang through the loyalty of its members was always a priority. To Ricky Jivens, 2 witnesses testified to statements made by Jivens as to Hull's loyalty to the gang. We reviewed these statements and concluded the subject discussed were made during and in furtherance of the conspiracy. The evidence shows that Jivens told CJR that Hull was instructed to shoot people 3 times in the head as his personal signature. The evidence shows that Jivens told Richardson that Hull had gotten down for the gang, that Jimbo did Anthony Anderson, and that Hull had taught him how to cook cocaine. It is evident that now with regard to the frailties of CJR, Hunter, and Moore's witnesses, credibility decisions are matters for the jury. United States v. Brown consensus 7F at 2D 5961. The jury by the verdict at the very least found CJR to be a credible witness. A conspiracy was present and that Hull was a trusted member. Under the liberal standard applied by this court, the district court's conclusion that these statements were made in furtherance of the conspiracy and they're admissible under Rule 801 is not clearly erroneous. Be sufficiency of the evidence to support the jury verdict. Hull claims that the evidence at trial was insufficient. Support his convictions under either the 21 USC paid for it. It's like any 18 USC's 94 weapons count. Hull contends that the government's case hinged upon the testimony of CJR, who was later impeached. And for the government claims that any discrediting of CJR's testimony is strictly limited to the Anderson homicide, about which CJR was not lying, but merely mistaken. The government further asserts that Hull's involvement in the slaying was corroborated by 2 independent eyewitnesses, Hunter and Moore 9. The evidence shows that Hull was a trusted member of the Ricky Jivens drug gang. The evidence also shows that Hull used firearms in furtherance of a conspiracy. CJR testified that Hull was present at planning sessions on the back porch of Ricky Jivens.
Murder's house, this alone suggests that Coldest are trusted. Confederate of the organization, it is doubtful giving Ricky Jivens strong propensity for violence and his paranoia about having a member turn on MIE, the murder initiation.
On a morning in September 1991, Savannah residents woke to news that felt surreal. 18 members of the Jivens drug organization had been indicted on federal charges. For many, it felt like the city had finally been freed. Federal agents executed raids across Savannah. Battering rams, flashlights cutting through darkness, officers shouting commands. Perp walks filled local news broadcast. Families lined courthouse steps to see the faces of the men accused of terrorizing their neighborhoods. The charges included conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine, racketeering, firearms offenses, drug trafficking crimes connected to murders. Witness testimony, some from inside the gang, revealed the brutal truth. A 15-year-old enforcer had killed on command. Members were ordered to commit acts of violence as loyalty tests. One high-ranking member received 14 life sentences plus went 15 years for a particularly vicious armed robbery and kidnapping. And at the center of it all was the young man who started it, Lil Rick Jivens Jr. He and his top lieutenants ultimately received some of the harshest federal sentences available. Savannah breathed a sigh of relief. The reign of Lil Ricky had ended. Segment 6. The Long Shadow. 3442.
You might expect the story to fade into history, but even decades later, the ghost of the Jivens gang still lingered in Savannah. In 2013, a controversy erupted when a Facebook page appeared online, apparently run by Ricky Jivens himself from federal prison. Local law enforcement and a former district attorney expressed alarm. How was a convicted gang leader communicating with the outside world? Who was running the page? Was he influencing people from behind bars? The story revived old fears, and in 2018 another headline shook the community. A former Jivens gang member was granted parole, triggering anger from prosecutors who insisted this gang committed more murders than any group in Savannah's history.
Families of victims spoke out. Officials warned the parole board of the gang's past brutality. The debate reopened deep wounds. Even now, more than 30 years later, the name Lil Ricky still sparks debate in Savannah. A legend, a warning, a symbol of an era the city fought desperately to move beyond.
7-7 aftermath and legacy.
42-45.
Math and legacy.
After the Jivens gang fell, Savannah began rebuilding. Public housing communities saw dramatic drops in violent crime. Children played outside again. Families walked to school without fear, and a city that once felt trapped in a nightmare began to heal. But the story of the Ricky Jivens gang is more than a crime saga. It is a lesson about what poverty, drugs, and hopelessness can create, about how fast violence can consume a community, about the power of coordinated law enforcement, and the resilience of the people who live in neighborhoods forgotten by many. Most importantly, it is a story about choices, the ones that led a young man to build an empire of fear, and the ones a city makes to take its future back. Savannah's scars remain, but so does its strength. This has been the reign of Lil Ricky, Savannah's deadliest drug gang. A reminder of how dark the streets once became, and how far the city has come since.